I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Marek. I'm going to try not to butcher your name on this. Simvlosky. Did I say that correctly?
You're very close.
I'm close?
Pretty good. Yeah.
I practiced so hard.
I've seen people murdered my name so many times. This was pretty good.
And then the other thing that I was practicing, which again, I'm really hoping I'm not going to butcher, but I want to say Vidamith Programia. Did I say that totally close?
I understood that. So where did you get that from? It's like, welcome to the show, right?
Yes. Oh, good. Because I was like, either I'm saying welcome to the show or I'm insulting someone in his family. We're not too sure which, but we're going to try. Google Translate was really, but I've been like walking around the house trying to say that. So great. I'm glad I said it right. That's the only thing I've got. I don't know how to say anything else, but
no curse words. Okay.
No, I haven't learned those yet. So you wrote the book Chasing Black Unicorns, which is the whole book in and of itself is an incredible story that you honestly think this has to come straight out of a Hollywood movie, because it's just so crazy, sort of what has happened to you. Can you give us like a brief sort of synopsis of the book and essentially of your life?
Yeah. So the shortest story possible is that I've spent almost the whole last decade running and building different online businesses in sub-Saharan Africa. It's a very niche, very, very niche in a niche, like online businesses in sub-Saharan Africa, very specific. And that day, almost a decade of my life has given me the most extreme adventures I could ever think of, both on the positive side and the negative side. On the positive side, I was part of this amazing business group called Jumia, which we started in late 2012, and last year it went public on New York Stock Exchange. So just building this from scratch with big investment funds was one of the craziest adventures of my life. And also, while I was living in Nigeria and I started investing and also building other companies, I got myself into this typical Nigerian trouble, as one might say. Essentially, there was this group of people that tried to take over my company, and they did that with the help of police. They corrupted. Basically, it's a typical scheme that happens in emerging markets where there's a lot of corruption. Apparently, an arrest warrant comes out of thin air, and you're either going to go to jail or you're going to spend 5 years trying to defend yourself, or you're going to do what they want you to do. And in my case, it was selling my company for almost nothing. I was one of those stubborn guys that decided to fight this in courts. Took me almost 3 years. Became the first and hopefully the last foreigner in the history of Nigeria justice system to take Nigerian police to court and prove that they did something illegal to me, and I won the case. There was also Interpol involved. My name was on the most wanted list next to terrorists from ISIS. We can discuss that as well. And that's the extreme negative side. And then now why the book? I always thought I'm going to write a book at some point. Obviously, I thought I'm going to be already old and rich and it's going to be my heritage. That didn't work because I'm only 34. Then when I was moving to Nigeria, I kind of realized that my knowledge is becoming very unusual because not too many people was doing what I've been doing. And then once this crazy thing with Interpol happened, I was like, wow, my book has just become interesting because it was supposed to be a business book. But if I put it all together, because obviously now from hindsight, I can laugh at what happened to me. It can be an entertaining story. And all my friends told me, you have to write a book. You have to write a book. There should be a movie about it. And at some point I was like, okay, let's do this. And And that's how Chasing Black Unicorns was created, and then the foundation where all the money goes to, and so on and so on.
Well, and in the book, like you talk about, you know, and I'm going to jump around. So for the listeners out there, get the book. You need to read it. 100% of the proceeds for the book go to a good cause. But read the book and then come back and listen to this episode again. It's all going to make sense to you. But
probably way more, yeah.
Yeah, probably way more. But in one of the parts in the book, you talk about how when you were younger, like, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, that their mother had a set plan for what their life was going to be like. And you talk about how she was like, okay, so you're going to go to school for, this is what you're going to go to college for. I'm going to get you a job. Your dad's going to build you a house. We're going to raise your kids. And then you were like, okay, so how far can I get from this plan? Has she come around?
Sorry?
Has she come around? Is she happy now with the decisions that you've made?
She is reasonably satisfied. It's not the way she wanted to, but she accepts the alternative way.
I love that. So in the book, you talk about how you were, you know, you went to college and university, you dropped out and you got into investment banking. And this is kind of when it was first almost starting up. And then you made it quite well in that.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call investment banking. Yeah. So so let me unpack this. First two chapters of my book is really about my high school times and my first businesses in Poland, because what happened to me when I was in high school really allows you to understand much better, and me to understand much better what happened to me later. Because writing the book was one of the biggest lessons for myself, not for the reader really. And then obviously I was this typical Polish family, middle class, father soldier, mother teacher. They wanted me to have a safe life because they were raised in communist country. They wanted the best for me. So for them, the only way to become independent is through education. Obviously, I did the total opposite. I dropped out of university and started first. You know, it wasn't really investment banking. That's how everyone was calling it, but that was just door-to-door salesmanship. And the only difference is that I wasn't selling encyclopedia. I was selling investment products and mortgages and insurance, because that's how you would sell those products in those crazy early capitalist days in economic financial markets in Poland. And those were the early 2000 years. And literally anything you would touch in financial markets would be just growing like 30, 40% year over year. It was so easy to sell, and so much money was made. And money also corrupts, because then you would just go crazy. I would make more money in a month than my parents in a year. So obviously the parties came in, the expensive cards,
and you were very young then, so
I was like 22 or something. And it was crazy. And then obviously 2008 came, Lehman Brothers, biggest crash, and from first million at 20 something, I ended up with $1 million at the debt because I just lost money, and I ended up being a bartender. Okay, now we have to make a connection with Africa and all those investment startups and so on. And one of my friends who did really well, he opened an online business, and he just offered me a job. He said, I'm not going to offer you much, I know, but I know you're in a hard position. You're working in a bar, for Christ's sake. I used to be an investment banker. So he's going to pay me a small amount of money. That was maybe $800 per month back then. But he also offered me shares, and he told me, this is a startup. If we're going to sell this company, you can make a lot of money from those shares. Just trust me. And although I had nothing to do with it, I was one of the luckiest guy ever. He actually sold this company. And the money that I got from those shares allowed me to pay my debts and everything. And then I was like, wow, I think I'm going to like this whole startup thing. And that's how I really got myself into it. And long story short, I opened one other business and another business. Many of them, again, went bankrupt, but many of them were able to sell and make money. And at some point, I met some guys from an investment fund who at that time really, really wanted to invest in Africa. And they offered me to go there to help them establish the businesses there. And they also offered me shares instead of a salary. And because I've already made money like that once, I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to risk it.
Yeah. And, I think it's so funny because even in reading the book, you talk about how you had kind of started, I believe it was a dating website, and that didn't really work out the way you thought it was going to. But then you started working with funeral companies and undertakers. What Like, I just think being
Yeah.
that young, that's probably not something that most people would be like, this is the market I'm going to get into.
Yes, I never liked competition. And what really resonated to me is the concept of a hidden monopoly. It's like, for example, Google. Google is really a monopoly in the search engine, and everything around everything is built around the Google search. And Google is trying very hard to pretend they're not a monopoly because that gives them such a big edge. So instead of building companies and being the best at what you do and being better than your competition, which I'm not good at, efficiency. I'm not a perfectionist. I can't compete with good competition. I prefer to choose businesses where I have an edge, an unfair advantage, or businesses that no one else wants to go to. So I had this methodology of what type of business I wanted to open. And then I realized that all my fellows from Poland, all those smart young guys that wanted to build another Facebook, that's exactly what they wanted to do. They were looking at social media. They were looking at fintech solutions. They were looking at marketplaces. None of them wanted to look at funeral business because this is not something you can go to a club and tell a girlfriend, a girl you just met at the bar, right?
It's
yeah.
So, I don't think that means something. That's not a pickup line.
That's not a pickup
or not a
line.
good one.
And all those geeks, all those nerds building those online businesses need a better pickup line. And I figured, I think not too many young people who I consider as a competition, because we knew how to build technology businesses, how to disrupt something. They won't enter the funeral business too soon. So I was like, maybe this is my blue ocean. And I've also realized that funeral sector is a sector that doesn't have too many changes. It's a very stable business. It's kind of like a taboo, depending on the cultural aspects of your country. Not too many people want to do this, and so on and so on. But the clients change whether you want it or not. Like, people are entering. We are now probably the first generation of those hardcore users of the internet. And unfortunately, our parents or grandparents are already at the age when they are leaving this world. And we will be the ones taking care of those services. And our generation is the first generation that will not ask the doctor or a priest for a funeral service. They will not open the newspaper. They will open their smartphone. That was my hypothesis. And in a way, it was true, because it was so easy to find clients on Google. It was so easy and so cheap to market funeral service on the internet, because none of the funeral homes back then really even thought about internet, were aware of this. So essentially, I've built like a booking.com for funeral sector, which means building this big website which aggregates all those offers in one place, doing online marketing, and then in the end sending clients to the funeral home. And that's how I really got myself into marketplaces. That's how I really got myself into emerging markets, because one of the reasons why I went to Nigeria is because the investment fund saw what I did in Poland in this sector. And as crazy as it sounds, for these German guys, these German investors, Poland was for them like the Africa of Europe, which it was a little bit ignorant. But doing that business in this very, very old school sector really helped me later to do what we've done in Nigeria a couple of years later. So, as maybe arrogant as their statement was, there was some truth in it, because here and there it was an emerging market when it comes to technology adoption.
So when you decided, so you get, you get this opportunity to, do a startup, but you didn't know a lot about Nigeria when they had offered this to you. So what was that like to make that move? Because to me, going to another country would be a huge move, but going to where you went, especially with the stories.
Yeah, there was absolutely no logic behind it. I was at the stage of my life when I remember I paid off my debts. The latest company I've launched was doing pretty well. However, I realized that I was lacking something. I dropped out of university. I never had proper networking. I felt like I hit the ceiling in terms of how big the company I can build, because I was lacking the knowledge, the expertise, the connections, and so on. So I felt like I wanted to work for someone better to learn. It's like, if you want to be an amazing online entrepreneur, and you're from the US, you probably want to work for Google or Amazon for a while. Yeah. In China, I guess that would be Alibaba. So in Europe, that's Rocket Internet, which is like the Amazon of Europe. Although they're not as known and they operate under many different brands, but they're very successful. So I kind of wanted to work for them because I thought that this is going to be my MBA that I never had.
Right.
So that was that. And also, I spent all my life in Poland, but I was watching MTV always. I was always watching CNN, and I was always looking how amazing your life can be if you travel around the world. And one of the reasons why everyone goes into online business is because you think you can do it anywhere in the world, which is the biggest bullshit ever. But that's another story. I really wanted to travel. I had nothing to lose. I was 26 by then. I just broke up with my girlfriend. I felt like, my time is running up. So I was like, what if not now? And obviously, I also knew that I am not investing my own money. It's this investment fund that actually wants to open a company and needs some managers to join the business. It's like, usually an entrepreneur goes to an investment fund and he has the idea and the company, he just needs money. But there are investment funds who do it the other way around. They know what type of company they want to open. They're just looking for people that will really fall in love with this idea. And they will fall in love because they're going to get shares. So they're going to have a long-term motivation, which was the case here. I really had nothing to lose. I figured worst case scenario, I'm going to spend their money and I'm going to learn something. So either way I win. But if this goes well, I'm going to be a part of something huge and I'm going to make some money. And I believe that it's possible because it already happened to me with that fintech business of my friend, which allowed me to pay my debts. And till 2 weeks or till 3 weeks of my travel, I didn't even know where I'm going, because in the beginning we had conversations about Egypt. And for Egypt for me was like, great, pyramids and kite surfing spots. I'm like, I'm going to be,
that sounds great.
I'm gonna have fun on the weekends. Yeah, doesn't matter how bad it's gonna be on the week. But then they I remember that email. Yeah, we're changing the flights. We're gonna start with Nigeria because this is the biggest market, also the most challenging. If you crack Nigeria, we can do anything else. And then I remember, okay, let's go to Google and see what Google tells me about Nigeria. Because when you're born and raised in Poland, what you learn about Africa in school is that a bunch of British guys did something very bad in that part of the world by colonizing Africa, and then they did something even worse by decolonizing it, because the way they gave them the country's independence is really leaving them vulnerable with internal divisions and so on and so on. Besides, the history of Europe is so complicated, like there's not enough time to even learn about other stuff.
Yeah.
So I just went with the flow. And now when I look at from hindsight, when I wrote the book, everything like looks so nice. But like it all made sense and it was planned, but that because you read the book, like it was all like a series and a bunch of unconnected decisions which absolutely were not thought through, and just in some crazy way they all made me into one whole.
Well, and it's true. And even reading the book, like I had said it a little bit when we were talking off air, that when I listened to the Audible version of it, and when I was first listening to the book, the first thought that went through my head is, this guy's ego is huge. Like, but I realized that, getting towards the end of the book, that is really what helped you, because how else, besides having that much confidence, could you do something like you did? Where most people would run, because it's not, there are obviously a lot of good points, but there's it's a very different culture there than I'm sure even what you're used to or what you were used to in Poland, and just how things work.
Yeah, absolutely. And also this is why I wrote that first and second chapter of my book, where I'm trying to explain what happened to me when I was in high school, the bullying, the being ridiculed by girls, the obesity and so on, created self-consciousness. That's the word, right?
Yep.
All those internal conflicts that, the next 15 years of my life, all I was really trying to do was trying to self-validate myself using external validation, which is the most powerful motivation tool in business you can have. The problem with it is that it will never be satisfied, and it can also destroy you very easily. So you have to you have to learn how to control it, and then you can be successful, because you start a dialogue with all your insecurities. And it can be very, very, very helpful in business, as long as you're aware that it can be destructive also. And in many situations where it was so bad, like this whole case with Interpol, right? Like in the end, I've paid more on lawyers than what they wanted from me, than what the company was worth, and I did it all out of stubbornness. I really got myself into this trouble because I pissed off the guy, right? And he wanted to teach me a lesson. So on the communication level, I take the blame, because I don't want to feel like a victim, because I don't want to feel powerless. I take the blame for pissing off the guy. The fact that someone then was pissed off to an extent he decided to break the law to take a revenge on me, that's another story. But I am trying to put this all in a context. My ego has really put me into my problems, but it also allowed me to be successful in many other situations. And I'm trying to show that double-edged sword here.
Well, and I think you do a good job of that in the book, because there are oftentimes, I have a very strong personality as well, which sometimes railroads people. There's two, like, either you like me or you don't. When people first meet me, like there's no, which I think is why I related so much with your story and with the book, because I was like, oh yeah, I've been there before. Like sometimes people just meet me and they're like, wow, she's the biggest bee I've ever seen in my life, because I just storm into a room and I'm like, I'm here, let's get this done, da 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 da, and then I leave. I'm not thinking. In my head, I'm just like, I'm really busy, I need to get stuff done, and I don't have that. Sometimes don't have that consciousness of going, that might be a little off-putting to some people, right?
Yeah, like, why are you so mean? And all you're trying to do is to be on point, not to waste time. Right?
Yeah. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm just trying to, like, get in, get out, kind of thing. So, and so tell us a little bit, because just to entice people to read the book, one of the things that I really latched onto was your story of when you first arrived and what that was like the shock of even like trying to take a shower and just how different it is.
Yes. So let me start with a joke. The joke goes this way. What is the difference between a tourist and a racist in Nigeria? And the answer is a week. Which means, I think there's a deep truth behind that joke. Actually, my Nigerian friend told me about it, is that all those bigotry and all that racism and xenophobia, all that comes from not willing to understand that certain things are being done in a different way. Our mind works in a way that certain things which are repeatable are going into our subconsciousness, because we don't want to spend time thinking about it over and over again. And when some things are done differently than what you're used to, you're getting frustrated. And if you don't open up yourself, and if you don't recognize that difference, you're gonna turn that frustration into racism. So I was aware of that, because I did my part of reading, of getting used to it. I also had a slight taste of what it means when other cultures look down on your culture, because I am part German, and Poland was a very poor country. And I remember when I was traveling to Germany as a kid from this, fresh out of communism, very, very poor Poland into West Germany, I remember how other kids I was playing with was treating me, and so on and so on. So I was like, yeah, maybe I want to watch out, and I want to be open to everything that's happening. And there are things which are different, which you would never expect that they are, and it's very frustrating. Like, for example, there's a total different definition of time. The driver that I used to drive with would always tell me, like, you have the watch, but I have the time. Everything is getting way more like chilled, relaxed. If someone tells you he's coming, that means he might be here after 3 hours late. Yeah? Someone says 5 minutes, it really does not mean 5 minutes. And you can get easily frustrated by those things. Again, it's so hard to generalize, because Africa is like 54 countries and hundreds of ethnic groups. And the differences between ethnic groups within one country are sometimes deeper than differences between two different countries between Western and Eastern Europe. But that was Nigeria. And what really struck me was how expressive Nigerians are. Especially in comparison to Poland, Poland, communist country, when everyone looks at you as they don't like you, but only until they get to know you, they will be very nice to you. In Nigeria, everyone by definition is already very open to you, very loud and very expressive. Whether he loves you or hates you, you will see that immediately. So, and that was like a culture shock, definitely. Out of all those examples that now come to my mind, but I think I was either lucky that I didn't mind that everything is different, although again, the differences between Polish culture and Nigerian culture are nothing in comparison to the differences between Polish and Japanese culture, because there's still Christianism. The British colonizer did their work, and so on and so on. There's the same language, because in Nigeria you speak English, and I also speak English, and so on and so on. I was really humble and open towards, okay, they do stuff in a different way. That doesn't mean it's better or worse. It is just different. Yeah, and obviously the weather was much was much hotter. In Poland, Poland is a very cold country. You know that, Canada.
Yeah,
right?
I'm in Canada, so we could, yeah.
Poland, everything above 10 degrees Celsius, for me, it's hot. I take off my shirt, yeah.
Yeah.
And Nigeria, everything starts from 30. Yeah, many stories, and I think one of those crucial things which I think made me fall in love with this country, although it was many times dysfunctional relationship and toxic and so on. It's a love and hate relationship, but that's what allowed me to stay there for 5 years, because then I moved to South Africa. But business has been continuing for almost a decade now, and many people would just go, and after 6 months they would leave. In my company, after 6 months in the country, I was already the oldest guy. I mean, oldest in terms of how long you stayed in this company, as the group of expats, as those people that were sent from from the headquarters. Yeah.
And like, do you find the reason for that was just the almost, I guess, the culture shock that people would have had to deal with coming into the company, that you had such a big turnaround of like people just wouldn't stay?
I guess there can be two reasons. You have to look always at the recruitment process, because usually when employee leaves early, usually it's the fault of the hiring manager, because at some point the expectations were not set properly, the recruitment process was not done, and so on and so on. But it also shows you how much different it is to live in those regions. Like, let me tell you this, also another example. What we consider as something obvious, like having running water and electricity in the office and in your flat, this is considered a luxury in Nigeria, because infrastructure is always a big issue, especially in this region. In order to have an apartment with running water and 24-hour electricity, you're going to have to pay like $2,000 extra, because it's called service apartment and so on. However, to have a personal driver, personal cook, and a cleaner, that's something very typical for a so-called middle-class family, because there's just so much poverty. It's so easy to hire those people. But in order to, when you have a cook or a cleaner and a driver in Canada, probably you are one of the top 10%, right?
Which to me, I'm like, that sounds lovely. I will go without the water if I can have somebody cook and clean for me. That sounds like luxury to me.
But also it's because it's so much easier to do it on your own in Canada, because you have Uber, you have probably some washing services. There are so many restaurants. You can just go to the corner shop. In Nigeria, everything was like a mission to go to a supermarket. It's always going to be an hour or two, because you're going to be stuck in traffic, and it was just the infrastructure wasn't there yet. 2012, Lagos was a city of 20 million people without public transport. Now it's getting better, right? 2015, Uber came. We were the first one to launch a food delivery service. We were the first one to launch online travel agency, booking flight tickets and cinema tickets online. We were actually the ones building those online services. But again, like, you can't count on those basics that are so basic in Canada or in Europe that you don't even think about them anymore, and you don't appreciate, and then you stop appreciating them. And if they are not here, doesn't matter what other challenges are, you're going to be so frustrated that your basic needs are not met, the Maslow pyramid, that you want to leave immediately. But there are also people who are just super spoiled. I remember there was one of the employees we hired. I think she came from France, and she was complaining that her internet is too slow because she can't watch Netflix properly. And I was like, oh my God, just yeah.
But it's true. You get, and I think that, that definitely was one of the things that the book did for me, was realize how fortunate I am to live where I live, where it isn't, like you said, it isn't a second thought for me to, turn on a light. And I was talking with this about my husband, and I said, I do feel almost really spoiled, because when I think of like not having electricity is like when we're camping, like that's so. You just don't think of those things because it's just something that is just common. You grow up with it. And I have a 13-year-old son who couldn't imagine life without technology, because he always has technology at his fingertips. So it seems obscure that, mom is older than Google, he's like, how can you possibly be? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't understand it either, but yeah, I am older than Google.
That's actually, me too, with that generation. I mean, obviously I spent a night in jail. I thought I'm going to spend 21 years in jail. And because of what I went through, obviously I appreciate life on a totally different level. I've also lost a father when I was 20 something. So I also appreciate life on a different level. But to be honest, everyone should go and live for a week in a country like that, to appreciate how blessed you are that you were born in so-called first world country. Because I don't know what the statistics are, but if you're not hungry, unless you're dieting, intermittent fasting, if you have a roof on your head, you have a fridge and electricity, you're probably in the top 5% in the world. Like the statistic is absolutely mind-blowing. And we forget about it, and the world would look much differently as part of your education. You would go for a week and live with those people. And not only that, you would just realize how happy they are.
True.
While you're getting frustrated because you go on Instagram, you think that everyone has a better life than you because everything is curated. So not only your life is 10 times better than those kids in Nigeria. We can talk about the foundation in a second. But you're also 10 times more miserable than they are. So the difference is really times 100.
Yeah. And that is true. Like, you see it a lot. I used to go and visit my mom in Puerto Rico, and some people like, I'm very Canadian. So my mom said, like, when you come to Puerto Rico, make sure that you put your Canadian flag on your bag. Like, really, that's important, because they look down on Americans, and there's a whole history there. But it was funny because I would see other people that were traveling. We were on a small island called Calabria, and they would be like, who would want to live here? Like, it's just like the homes are all dilapidated. And I'm going, oh my God, these are the happiest people I've ever seen in my life. They're like, we're just going to close the shop. And I'm like, oh, why are the stores closed? And mom's like, oh, the surf is in. They're probably gone surfing. And I'm like, that's insane. Like, that just would not happen in Canada, right? You don't just close because, or they were taking
insane,
a nap. They just put a sign up and say, gone for a nap. And I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like this, my husband would love it here. He would thrive.
Yeah. I can relate to that. My girlfriend is Dominican, and we're actually going back to the DR now. And I really appreciate you. I start to appreciate more and more that lifestyle, because I, had my share of experience in the other side of the wall.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about, we've touched on it briefly. And of course, this is one of the main things in your book that you talk about, and that people latch onto, of course, is your whole experience with Interpol and being arrested.
Yeah.
And you talk a lot in interviews about how this was like the best day and the worst day. And I remember reading the book, because you had talked about this was the day that your girlfriend said that she loved you. And that was a big moment for you. And then you get arrested. And I had to stop because I was driving and I had reached my destination. And I was like, what is the first conversation that he had with his girlfriend after that? Because I was just like, it just boggled my mind. And I was like, I was captivated by that story because I was thinking, if the last thing they said to each other was, I love you. And then he's like, yeah, so maybe I'll see you in like 21 years. So tell us a little bit about that story of what that experience was like, because that must have been terrifying.
Yeah. Well, again, you couldn't make this stuff up, right?
Right.
I mean, if I wanted, so actually this is written in the book, but what happened is that when I told her I love her, she went to her own, because we were at the airport at the same time. We had two different flights, and her flight left earlier, so I was able to walk her to the flight. Her flight was the one without needing to check your passport, because it was within the same Schengen zone. In European Union, you don't need to show passports. And that was like the most amazing day ever, because we were dating for a couple months. We went to Poland for Christmas. She met my mother. Before that, I met her parents, and so on and so on. So like, love story, amazing. And then all like butterflies in my stomach. I go to the airport's checking stage where you show your passports, and that's where they tell me apparently there's this arrest warrant that just came into the system, and we're gonna send you to Nigeria. And obviously there was shock, and I didn't know what to do. And before they took my stuff, I remember sending a text message to my lawyer. I mean, this is where I am. Try to find me. I don't know what's going to happen to me. And I sent her a message that I actually lied to her, because I wrote her that I'm going to be in London, because we're flying to London, and I have to straight from the airport, I have to run to the hotel and then to the meetings. So I might be offline for a full day or the next day. So don't worry about me. Hoping that somehow I will figure this out, right?
You do realize now that was I can just imagine being a woman. I can imagine that was probably a horrible mistake, and you got in a lot of trouble for that.
Yeah, and obviously, so I spent the night in jail, and in the end I contacted her like a day later, because in total it was 2 days, so she was already getting worried. And when I told her what happened, the first thing she said is like, why the fuck didn't you tell me the truth? Because I would want to help you. Yeah, so I was like, okay, I think I made a good choice by dating you, falling in love with you.
Which was, and you do in the book talk about that, but I know that was the one question that came through my head. There were so many questions at the end, so I was glad you answered that, because I was like, what was that conversation like? I can only imagine what I mean, my husband knows better, just tell me the truth.
Yeah.
So a few other questions I have, which again, you need to read the book, because some of these will make more sense when you do it. And it really is a roller coaster ride of a read and a listen. Like I had a 6-7 hour drive, and I just listened straight through the whole thing. Even getting out to get a tea, I was like throwing my earbuds in so that I could listen, because I just couldn't stop.
So nice.
Fantastic. But I have a few questions that weren't answered. Do you, and feel free to answer them or not, it's up to you. They're not terrible, but I was curious, are you still in contact with Freddie? Because you talk about Freddie a lot in the book.
Yeah.
And I was like, what happened to Freddie? And I was like, I mean, I have stalked you very, very well on the internet, but I was like, nowhere does anybody ask him about Freddie. Why is nobody asking this man if Freddie is still around?
Yes, Freddie is still around. So for those who haven't read the book, Freddie is this. So the problem in big airports in Africa is that there's just so many delays. There are lines for everywhere. There are way more checkpoints. And even if you're flying with business class or you're a diplomat, that's still not enough. There's still always a line anyway. So what you have to do is you have to hire so-called protocol officers, which kind of give you the VIP treatment at the airport. And Freddie is like one of the coolest protocol officers that would take advantage of his papers that allow him to be a VIP at the airport, and sometimes take me everywhere without having to wait 4 hours in the line. But also he's very creative by sometimes basically like coming up with some stories. Like once he told me to sit down in a wheelchair because there was like a huge line. I would never make the flight. I don't want to tell too much. So Freddie is still doing well. He's in Nigeria. We actually talk on WhatsApp from time to time. And anytime I'm back, although I'm not flying there too often now, because I shit my pants every time I land in Nigeria for obvious reasons. He's still there. Yeah, he's one of the coolest characters, one of the most original characters I have ever come across. Yeah, and the funniest thing about Freddie is that the way he dresses. He always has like a very colorful suit, and he always has his socks matching the color of his tie, like a blue suit and yellow socks and yellow tie, which is, and he looks so original in comparison to anyone else at the airport. And that originality also allows him to have a personal brand and being treated differently at the airport. I think one of my favorite chapters of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the stories are incredible, and I definitely latched onto Freddie. You've definitely made him a superstar, I think.
Yeah.
And then the other one, and I might butcher this name. I've tried very hard with my pronunciations, but it was your driver that you had when you first went there. Terrible, am I saying that right, or did I totally butcher it? Okay.
Terrible. Yeah.
And so he originally started as your driver, but sort of came up with you in the company. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's a great story. And then where is he now? What's my other question?
Cool story that really defined everything else that I've done, in the way I treat opening businesses in Nigeria, because Taribo was a young Nigerian guy. He went to the States and he studied there for a year, but he had to come back because he couldn't make the money. His visa, he didn't want to make him visa longer. In the end, he just came back to Nigeria, and then all his ambitions were kind of broken. And he just bought, with his own last savings, he bought a car, which was a nicer car than any other taxi drivers would have. It was like a nice Acura sedan with leather interior. So obviously I wanted him to drive me, because you have to be driven in Lagos. Otherwise you would spend 3 hours in the traffic every day. And unfortunately, when you're white, you're going to be stopped at every junction because the police confuses you with a walking ATM. Yeah, there's another chapter only about that. And I remember one day I had this problem where you basically have to go to the toilet every 15 minutes because I got some infection after what I've eaten, which unfortunately is typical. It happens a lot when your stomach is not used to Nigerian food. And it was an important meeting with a hotel. At that stage, we were building an online travel agency, and I had to sign a deal with a hotel where they pay me money if I send them clients from our website. And I couldn't go to the meeting, and it was already too late to cancel, and the hotel manager would be just too upset that I stood him up and so on and so on. So Taribo suggested, let me do this for you, because I've been listening to your phone calls every time we drive. So why not? I was like, yeah, well, to be honest, why not? I mean, I have nothing to lose. And he went, did the negotiations, he signed everything and went back. And then it happened a couple more times. I actually ended up hiring him. He was our sales guy. Then he moved to be a sales manager. Then we moved him to a team called financial operations, which basically was responsible for making sure hotels pay us on time. That's details unnecessary. Anyway, he still works with the company, and now he has like a team of 50 people below him. And that's one of the coolest story that I always like to say, because it's very symptomatic to the satisfaction of launching business there. I have been accused of being a white savior many times by saying this, and I will still defend this case with all the responsibility. When you enter an early stage market like Nigeria in 2012 and you're opening an online business, I'm able to give a certain type of job to those amazingly talented young people that they wouldn't be able to get from someone else at that time, because there were just not too many companies like ours. And by giving them such an unusual job, I opened their possibilities in a much wider way, because now they can do something in online, this emerging market, growing market. And that story has repeated itself in many other occasions. Many of my employees are now open their own companies, and they've raised money, and they're from investors, and they're super happy. What's cool is that you're opening a type of business that no one else has done, and you're transferring the knowledge, because you're hiring people. Then they either stay with you, or you allow them to leave and open something in the same sector, hopefully not opening a competition to you. But that's really how you're transferring knowledge. You open a business that doesn't exist, you hire local people, you let them grow within your organization, and then obviously, naturally, some people leave and some of them open their own business. And when you see that someone that was hired by you And back then, all he could do was being a taxi driver. And now he left, not him, but someone else, for example. And he opened an online marketing agency, or another guy opened a fintech solution, another guy built an application. As cheesy as it sounds, my company was the company that opened their possibilities towards online business. Otherwise, they would just open another, I don't know, a bar, street food, or something like that. So the transfer of knowledge and opportunities is really what always excited me about launching businesses in emerging markets, because this is the most romantic, the most real, I think the most helpful, the most positive version of capitalism, without those international corporations destroying the environment, having more power than the governments, and so on. Just real people solving real problems, making money for themselves, hiring another people. Exactly what Adam Smith wrote about in this famous book, Wealth of Nations. And that's really, really cool.
Yeah. And oh, that's great. Because that was one of the questions that was on my mind. I'm like, what happened to these people? I need to know. So when I found out that we were actually doing the interview, I'm like, well, I'm asking them these questions. So after all was said and done with the Interpol and, listening to it from my perspective on hearing everything that you went through and how that came to be, the first thought that went through my, and I probably shouldn't say this, but that's okay. The first thought that went through my head was, this is the biggest hissy fit a man has ever had. Like, it just felt like, I can't believe that, like a tantrum.
Okay.
Like that, what like a child makes, right? Like, it just seemed like to have that in your head, to have such a vendetta or against somebody, to do something as drastic as what happened to you, seemed so obscure of a thought. But the one thing that came to my head is, what was it like for you after all was said and done? You won the court case, it was taken off and everything, but then traveling again, because there was obviously a lot of press that went along with what was happening to you. So you also had to deal with all of the bad press and the rumor reels. What was that like after, like the aftermath of everything?
Yeah, so two angles here. Till today, every time I travel, every time I see a guy in a uniform at the airport, my heart stops, adrenaline goes up. Every time. And also for many, many months afterwards, although my arrest warrant, who has been in this global system of Interpol, has been taken down, it's still, there's always a trace. So I was always on the watch list. I would always be stopped additionally, and every time they stop you, there's always this memories coming back, and it was so regular. And back then I was traveling like twice per week between Warsaw and Barcelona, or Cape Town, Madrid. I would even go to the flight crew saying, once we land, there will be police people asking for me, so we don't have to call me through the plane communication system, so all those passengers look at me as like I'm a criminal. I know they are waiting for me, so let me just go and greet them. So that's this. That I guess that's always going to stay. And yes, there was a big backlash and a huge hate towards me, which had many, many layers. So let me try to unpack it, because it was a very, very humbling and also learning experience for me. I've learned a lot. So I had to make this case public when this thing happened to me. Let me quickly give you a context of how Interpol works. Interpol is like Facebook for police all over the world. It's like a platform that allows them to connect, share information, and work better. Very humble goal. But just like Facebook, the reality is a little bit far away from what the initial goal was, because with 160 member countries and tens of thousands of different arrest warrants which are being sent between countries, there are also many arrest warrants which are illegal. And Interpol is trying to be super objective. They treat arrest warrants from Nigeria the same way they treat arrest warrants from Switzerland. And there might be difference in the democracy level or law-abiding levels of certain countries. And imagine someone posted a bad photo of you that they didn't have the right to post, and you want them to take it down, and they don't want to take it down, although they should. The law is on your side. Good luck going to Facebook and appealing at Facebook. Right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers, and it's going to take you 2 years. And that's how Interpol is being abused, because it's so easy to put an arrest warrant into the system you wouldn't even know. All you have to do is to have a friend, if you know what I mean, at some police station in Nigeria that has access to the internet. He puts an arrest warrant, signs it, scans it, puts it in the system, boom, it's everywhere in the world, because all those countries are connected. Now, if they don't want to take it down, good luck going to Interpol, appealing in France. There are 20,000 arrest warrants every month which are being appealed. Let's say only half of them, 20,000 per month. Usually it takes from 2 to 5 years to take down an arrest warrant if it's illegal. And during those 2 to 5 years, your image is broken. You will not be able to travel. You can't get a loan. Banks will even sometimes cancel your contract because you're a fugitive, right? It's designed at making you go bankrupt and bleed out, unless you do what the person that put you there in the first place wants you to do. So I knew what's happening. I was lucky enough to have some money to hire the best lawyers and so on. And they told me, you have to go to press with this, because Interpol doesn't like bad press. Once someone is interested in your case, they will give your case a higher priority. And that's what I did, what I have done. The problem is, by doing this, I have exposed what's happening in Nigeria. I have exposed that it's very risky for a foreign investor / entrepreneur to do business in Nigeria, because just like that, his life can be changed, broken. My house was also raided. My bank accounts were frozen. It's in the book, right? And I have scared a lot of investors, because I was known. I was this Polish guy that did some big things in Nigeria. It's a small world, the online community. So in a way, I have probably done a lot of bad stuff unintentionally to people that were maybe in the process of getting some investors. Because everyone from Europe, from the States, were like, oh my God, we're not going to Nigeria. Look what's happening to this guy. And there were so much upset people with what I have said, because I have put, again, bad PR to Nigeria. And then you put on top of this all the racism. There are still huge racial tensions. Now it's very obvious to see after what happened in the States. There's a lot of racial tensions, and there's still a lot of bad blood between Nigerians and the Western world, because we all remember what we've done, what the West has done. And it was like adding oil to the fuel. Now this white guy, that was the narration, now this white dude who has achieved so much thanks to his white privilege in my country, now he has the guts to say something bad about my country. So there was a lot of people who had no clue what the case is all about, but they joined the other side, trying to obviously defame me, because once they got exposed, they had to save the face. And we know what they're going to do. They're going to throw even more shit on me. And they had the support of all the huge people that were just looking for a way to bring the white dude down, because there was a lot of historical animosities thrown on top of it. And I'm not trying to put myself a victim. I'm trying to analyze this objectively. And then on top of that, you can put the cancel culture of social media, right? When all that shit was thrown at me, it was amazing, and it was so fun to destroy someone on Twitter. It took me a month to prepare a defense where I was able to every accusation. I basically showed evidence. And my defense, my rebuttal, which was like a 20-minute article after all the accusations that they thrown at me, was too long. And then once I posted this, it's like, oh, now it's too boring. Like, why do we even bother saying this? So that's the problem about social media and the attention span of the current world, is that it's so easy to destroy someone just by throwing stuff out there. There are all those trolls and haters that are just going to eat you on social media, and the damage is done. And you can never fix it, even if you're going to win in court and so on, because the damage has already been done. And unfortunately, that is becoming an increasingly big issue, which is one of the reasons why I support podcasts so much, because I think that long form is an antidotum to social media tools, which are designed at enhancing conflict, not enhancing understanding. When I see people tweeting at each other, 200 characters left, 200 characters right, this always gets escalated in the wrong way, because you can't find an agreement if all you have is those 200 characters. It's designed at escalating conflicts for me. And the long forms, when we are looking in each other's eyes, we're not now in COVID, we're sitting in one room, there's a much higher chance we're gonna end up aligning on something or understanding each other's positions. I believe that social media tools, it was probably not by design. It's a collateral damage, I believe. The result is that we are escalating conflicts. We are enhancing the disagreements, not building tools that allow us to find an agreement. So, to finish my story, I could also see who is on my side, who is not on my side, because when there's this huge wave of people going after you, because now everyone thinks I'm a fraud, you see that who was your fake friend, because now you see that they're joining that other wave. And so you wait a little bit, then you come back with your rebuttal, everything is explained, but they can not change their position anymore. So it was a social detox for me as well, just like the book itself. And just like every detox, it was very painful, but made me stronger in the end.
And I think it's true what you said about social media, because one of the things that I have found that social media has done is taken the curiosity out of people. Whereas, you know, if I read something, I then go and research that. And then, you know, like even with your book, I was like, I really need to do some more research about Africa, because I really don't know a lot about it. Like you said, it's not something that we're often taught in school. What we see, you know, in mainstream media is, of course, the most poverty-stricken, you know, pull at heartstrings type thing. But that has really been taken away. So people really do take those, you know, small amount of characters and take it as if it's, you know, gospel. Well, somebody wrote this, it must absolutely be true. And then they fly with it, because it's much easier to fly with scandal than it is with, you know, I mean, sometimes the truth is boring. You know?
Absolutely. The truth is boring. Yeah. And I love what you just said, that social media took out the curiosity out of our communication. And I also remember I don't know who said that, but I heard about this in Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan is my hero, by the way. That information, just like food, shouldn't be consumed processed. And I really love that quote, which relates to it, because we are processing the information to shorter bits.
Yeah. So one of the other questions I had for you is, again, I do stalk very well, but you were on a couple of interviews, and now Marek is a hard name for some to say. So how did, I'm trying to remember the name now. Chinedu. So so I took sign language. This is going to be a little off, but it'll make sense in a second. I took sign language, and in American Sign Language, you get a sign for your name instead of spelling it out. But it's given to you. You can't make it. So usually somebody who that is sort of, that is their language because they're deaf or mute or whatever, they have to give it to you. It's not something that you can just make up yourself. So sometimes you get one that you're like, that is not the sign I wanted. Mine is this, which is brown noser. Because when I was taking the course, I was all in learning sign language. Like I took everything I possibly could. So I was like a teacher's pet. So that kind of became my name, which I was like, this is not the name that I want. So how did Chinedu come for you? Like, is it the same thing in that it's like a name that you're sort of bestowed, or?
I remember it was like first year of me being in Nigeria. My friend was obviously murdering my name. And then he was trying to pronounce it for the 5th time. And then at some point, because Chinedu is a name from the Igbo ethnic group, which means God leads. And he said, like, you just look like a Chinedu. And I was like, okay, fine. And obviously, it was always a great icebreaker. Whenever I said, oh, this is my nickname, it was all fun. Always helped me in icebreaking. And then for that period, that very tough period of the dark period of my life, when I was fighting all those fraud accusations in courts, and then on social media I was this villain, like in Batman. There was this quote from Batman that if a hero lives long enough, he's always going to end up as a villain because he will do something wrong. And at some point I was this type of a celebrity because of this like young Polish dude in Nigeria doing something. All those breakfast TVs wanted to invite me, and what I didn't know is that there's a lot of jealousy and hatred being built up towards me because I'm this white guy playing my white privilege. And then it all blew up when accusations happen and all those people jump on this. Then I deliberately doubled down on this nickname, and I added this on my social media, and I put this everywhere because I wanted to expose that everyone that is really against me, that animosity towards me has nothing to do with the case itself. They just don't like that the white guy came to their country and opened a business there, and now he's stealing my name. How dare he? Yeah? So that was also that stubbornness and that ego of mine that we've mentioned.
Yeah. So what are you working on now? Like, I just think you're very young. You're what, 34 you had said?
Yeah.
So you're still really, well, I can say that because I'm almost 10 years older than you. So I can say you're really young. But what are you working on now? Like what projects do you have going?
Yeah. So still, do you remember that Volvo truck ad with Jean-Claude Van Damme when he's doing like this leg split between two trucks?
Yes.
I feel like that right now because 50% of my time is still all about Africa, and this African online business, especially in Africa, is a big bet, one of the biggest bets of my life, and it's a long game because I still haven't really made any significant amount of money in the last 10 years in Africa. We've built some companies, but it's not the time yet to capitalize on those assets. There are way easier ways to build business and make money in Africa. So that bet is still ongoing. We have a performance marketing agency in Africa where we work for big brands, and that's amazing because we started 4 years ago, and now we're one of the biggest agencies in Africa in digital. But then I've realized that I feel like I need a second bet. I want to keep growing because once you start, and I want to keep learning because once you stop learning, you start getting old. So I figured that I want to get out of my comfort zone and I want to invest and do something totally different. And I've invested in a solar energy startup from Sweden. And its main focus right now is actually Western Europe and North America, and only later Africa. Essentially, they are building the European competition for Tesla roofs. Amazing market and sector. And for me, everything is new about this because I've never in my life had anything to do with physical products. This is the first time in my life I can touch the product that I'm building, because for me it was always either financial market, software, or marketing services. And now we're actually building roofs on top of people's heads. And so I have to learn about everything. And then we're all running this business in a totally different market. This is why I'm in Spain now, for example. So I also have to keep learning geographically, not to be closed in this box. Okay, this is the Africa guy. So I feel like Jean-Claude Van Damme because I'm doing two extremely different things. At the same time, it's very exciting time of my life where I'm learning a lot. And remember, last 3 years, I spent most of my time first in courts, dealing with stress, dealing with depression, because many times I thought I'm not going to make it. It's all in the book. And then writing the book, promoting the book a little bit, recharging my batteries. And since March this year, I'm back full throttle again in business. And I feel like I'm like a newborn in a way. So super exciting time for me. And again, just like in Africa, again, as cheesy as it sounds or as naive as it may sound, in Africa, I love the fact that your business is actually a CSR itself. Like you are seeing the tangible effect of your business onto the environment you're in. In Europe, you would just open another mobile application that would steal money from millennials, right? And in Africa, it's much more real. and in solar power, I see that it also has a positive effect on the climate change. I mean, there's a lot of conversation and around, whether the new solutions are really helping in climate change and how ideal they are. And to be honest, they are far from ideal, that's for sure. But we have to go into that direction. And I feel like I'm helping in this one small step into making a more sustainable lifestyle for everyone, and being more independent from energy sources which are not renewable.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the Maya Foundation, because this is where, we had talked about the proceeds from the book, but explain a little bit more about what it is, because I think it's an incredible thing.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible business module, I think, the way you have it set up.
Yeah, another thing which I didn't plan at all. So again, in that wake of all that drama and all that media attention that was happening around my Interpol case and the book and everything else, I wanted to kind of make a statement that I'm not writing this book to make money out of it. I'm not kind of capitalizing on the drama of Nigerian corruption and so on and so on. So I wanted to put this money into a proper charity. And I approached this problem just like I would approach any other business problem, like an investor. Let's search for some good charities in Africa. Show me your P&L, show me where you're getting the money from, show me how you're spending the money, what is the net result of your actions, what is the short-term gain, what is the long-term effect, and so on and so on. And oh my God, the rabbit hole I got myself into. Long story short, the charity model is broken. It doesn't work. If it was working, Africa would be the richest region in the world, considering how much money was being pumped to Africa.
Yeah, but it doesn't make it there.
It doesn't make it there. Charities are amazing at helping a city recover from an earthquake, or even the whole country recover from a war. But it's not going to lift whole nation out of poverty, because it requires much different approach. And I was like, maybe instead of searching for an ideal solution and one organization that will solve all the problems, maybe we should just empower more people doing small stuff. One person that is not able to help everyone, but if every person helps one person, we're good. So I kind of tried to follow that thought process, and I also wanted to, again, we were speaking about luck. We're so extremely lucky in terms of where we were born. There are kids in Nigeria which are 10 times more talented than we are, and they will never have 10% of our life quality that we have, just because of where they were born. So I was like, I want to redistribute my luck in life. I wanted to find a region in the world where people are screwed in any possible way. Like, they check all the boxes. And there's many of those places. But I didn't have to search long, because one of those places was in Nigeria. It's Maiduguri, for example, in Borno State, when you have Boko Haram, who kidnaps girls, turns them into sex slaves. You have radical Islam, who in this religion system, to put it in a diplomatic terms, you as a woman, you're not going to have the most powerful position in the society. Your options are limited. Then those kids are orphans. So like, how screwed can your life be if you're an orphan? And obviously, extreme poverty, no infrastructure, no power, no water, and so on and so on. We found an orphanage school there, and we decided to do something about this. And then again, another problem that I would see is that charities are a slave to their donors. So they have to keep scaring about how bad the problems are to get more money, but at the same time, they're scaring off investors. If you see an advertisement in TV with a kid with big belly, you're going to want to help that kid, but you're not going to think about investing money in that country, right? So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. So I figured, I don't want to be dependent on money from donors, because then I'm going to have to focus on short-term results of my actions. I'm going to want to sponsor 100 meals a day, because I can make a nice Facebook photo out of it. But I'm not going to focus on the long-term goals, which are not visible for 10 years, because I am dependent on that annual budgets I'm getting from my donors. So I was like, I have to have a small organization that will only run from my own money. including all the revenue from the book, all the speaking engagement related to my book, and some savings or just monthly income that I can partially put into the foundation, because then I can do it the way I consider it the best in the long term, the way I want to help. So we decided that we're going to make a very hard decision of helping only a small group of kids, but the ones which have the highest chance of becoming financially independent in the long term. Because then we're going to hope that they will be appreciative enough to come back to their regions they came from, and then with all that passion they have, with all the understanding of the local market that they have that I don't have, they will be able to make a difference. And that's how, again, I'm transferring knowledge and skills and luck into someone else. So the first stage, which we are now in the middle of, is we're building a second and a third building of that school, because there's 300 kids and there was only one building. 50 kids can learn at once, which means the rest of the kids were sitting on ground under the sun, and there's a blackboard put on the wall where the teacher writes. And again, I'm not going to send you the photo because I don't want to do this, because I believe that sharing of those photos has a opposite effect. You can see some on my website, but nothing more than that. Once this is done, we're putting furniture, we're putting some school equipment, some books, and so on. And everything is bought and sourced locally. Because another problem that charity do is that they send stuff there. Every mosquito net you're going to send to the country, you are making a local mosquito net producer go bankrupt. The best way is to send money there. But the problem with sending money is that it's easy to steal money.
Right.
Unless you're sending digital money, you're sending to someone's mobile wallet, unless you're using technology which gives you transparency that the old and big charities don't want to go to. So I also wanted to use technology to enforce transparency. And then after the school is working properly, we can start looking at which of the girls, 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, are showing very, very good results in mathematics, in science. Why? Because for me, as an entrepreneur, having my background, if I have a kid that is very good at maths, I can sponsor his scholarship in primary school. Then I can help him get into a university, which I can also support him financially. And considering my background and the sector I'm in, it's going to be much easier for me to help him with an internship. Because my sector always needs web developers. My sector always needs graphic designers and accountants. So I'm going to help him get that done. And then hopefully we're going to have this kid that went through the whole 10 years process, got good education, financially independent, and hopefully now he will spend some part of his money and some part of his time in helping others. He doesn't have to go back to my foundation. My foundation might be closed by then. He might open his own foundation, but he should give back, because if it wasn't for us, he wouldn't be where he is. So he should now help someone else to have this chain continue. That's my long-term goal.
Yeah. And I think that that's a great way, it's a sustainable way to do it, but I think it's true in what you say that I think your reach that way is almost a little bit bigger, because yes, you're only pulling a small section of those kids, but you've also built this school where there's so many more that now can learn in a better environment. So your reach is actually quite bigger.
It's true. And also I wanted to make it clear, it is not my intention to now convince all the people listening to give me money to the foundation. No, I don't need your money. I want you to write the book and to read the book, and then hopefully you will like the book. If you don't like it, it goes to the good cause. And the book itself, if you buy a hard copy, works perfectly as a table stabilizer. But my intention is to have you also learn about my foundation, to make you understand how much easier than you might think it is to do your own initiative and maybe think about something on your own. The success of my foundation is not counted in how much money I have raised, because that's not my point. I will also count the success of my foundation by how many people I've inspired to do what I'm doing.
Yeah. And I think that's where we need to go, because I think there's a lot of people that are out there that go, well, that's really great. I would love to, help people, but I don't have it in me to move to somewhere like Nigeria and start something up. So if they're interested in doing something like investing or even becoming an angel investor for these new startups to help them, what are some of the things that, like, from your experience, that they should watch for? because like you said, how do you know, right? Like, how do you know who to give money to? So what are some things that, you could think of? Here are some things that you need to pay attention to.
I mean, when you're someone like living in Canada and you want to invest some money, let's say your investment ticket is from $50,000 to $100,000. I don't think investing in African startups is for you. I don't think investing in startup is for you at all, because being an angel investor also requires a lot of time, and the risk risk reward ratio is much different. I would discourage from doing that. I would rather put money into an investment fund who then does the investing. Simply because the success rate of investing in startups is so low. I mean, one startup out of 10 that you invest in is going big, and it's normal. So you would have to invest $500,000, 10 times $15,000 ticket, and to be able to choose those startups wisely to even bet your chances. Otherwise, it's just money on charity, not really on proper investments. However, if you care about investing in Africa, but you're someone living in Canada doing your own thing, I would discourage you from doing that, because it might be super risky unless you're going to spend a lot of time by doing this. But there are ways that you can help transfer knowledge, because transferring knowledge is the most important way for me. Hire someone for an internship from Nigeria, help them get a visa, offer them a basic salary, $500 per month, whatever, so they can just survive, and hire them as an interns to work for 6 months in your country. The amount of knowledge and ambition and motivation they're going to get, the amount of energy they're going to come back to their country is absolutely uncounted for. My best employees were actually the ones who were lucky enough to be on a very, very short internship somewhere. I could see how different they are just by having that short experience of working someone else. I mean, I don't have to search long. That's how my parents really started. My father was a soldier. My mom was a teacher, like I said. But when I was a kid, when I was like 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, every holiday, vacations, I would go to my grandparents, and they would go to Germany. Again, Poland, super poor, Germany, very rich. And they would just work. They would start. My father was a gardener in a private house. My mom was washing the dishes, and higher education, teacher, and so on. And then she's just washing the dishes, because that's how much more money they were making. And then she got hired into a restaurant, and also got higher and higher. And that transfer of money and knowledge and the language they've learned into their country of origin through them was what really was very valuable for me, I believe. Because you're not just sending money, you are sending knowledge and money through people who are vested to build that particular region, because that's where they come from. So I would look at, I don't know, inviting someone for Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba. When he was a kid, he was being invited, I think, 4 years in a row to an Australian family. He was like building this networks. I think it's a very, very effective way.
And I think that that's a way too that you can get out of your little bubble, because I think a lot of people, and I can put myself into that too, when you're raised in a certain country, you do end up in a bubble of what life is like, and sometimes you don't look past that to see how other people, because even when you say like $500 a month, and I'm thinking most people here would be like, what? That's like pennies, right? Like that's nothing, because I mean here, like in Canada, as an example, the minimum wage. So my son can start working at 14 and would start at $15 an hour. To me, that's crazy, because I think when I started my first job, it was $4.25. Like, and I just think that's an insane amount of money. I mean, he's really excited about it, but it's that, I think that the transfer of knowledge, I think, is a fantastic way to put it.
And it just, you sometimes you have to look at those differences and engage with those people to understand that. Nigeria, just to finish with some statistics, There's like between 180 and 200 million people living in Nigeria because no one really knows. A very young population. More than 60% of people have less than 30 years old, are less than 30 years old. And only 1% of the population makes more than $9,000 per year, which is like $750 per month.
Yeah.
Less than 10%, right? Sorry, 1% makes that amount of money. That tells you how big the gap between the rich and the poor is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. It just seems so obscure, but again, I think that's all stuff that we need to, start paying more attention to and start doing the more research. And I think that's, like I said, that's one of the problems is people get stuck in their little bubble, and we need to open that up. And I think we're seeing more of that with technology allowing us to interview someone who is in Madrid or, reach people from all around the world, which, still boggles my mind because before that didn't happen. I mean, my father was in the military and I remember talking through ham radios to try to talk to him when he was, stationed overseas and stuff. So there is good parts to technology, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
Many. Yeah. You just need to know how to use it, like everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everything. Every time there's a new technology, there's a huge risk it might destroy us if we don't learn how to use it. But this is not the first time we were dealing with this. I mean, in 50 years ago, we came up with technology that could easily destroy the whole world, nuclear bomb. But the nations of the world found out a way that it's been 70 years, no, not 50, 70. Somehow no one has
done it.
Blew up the world, which would be very, very easy, right? Civilization evolve. We just need to be aware that every new technology we come up with is even more powerful, and we have to be really aware not to destroy the whole world by just trying to figure out the best way how to go about it, the new technology, because I think the stakes are higher and higher. Every new technology can destroy everything much faster, much bigger. I think that's the risk.
Yeah. So if people are interested in learning more about your story and your book and your foundation, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah. So I have a domain which goes just like my last name, but obviously no one remembers that. That was a bad idea. So I open a new one, which goes the way my book goes. So chasingblackunicorns.com. And this is like hub for everything that I'm doing. So both my professional and private activity, the ones that I can share publicly, the book, of course, and all the things about the foundation. So chasingblackunicorns.com for anyone interested. Also all the links to purchase the book. Thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah. And thank you so much for coming on the show. The book was fantastic. It does read like a Hollywood movie script. But it was really informative, and without giving it away, at the end, one of the things that really struck me was when you talk about turning 30 and how there was a shift for you mentally. And I don't want to go into it because I want people to read the book to understand it. But that was a very interesting piece. So hopefully that will entice people.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Important stage for me, at least. Yeah. So
thank you again so much. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Yeah, it was great. I mean, now I'm just looking at the time. We've been speaking for 90 minutes and I didn't even know where the time went. So good indication of a good call. Yeah.
So if our conversation didn't entice you to head out and get your copy of Chasing Black Unicorns, I'm telling you, this book has everything. It will keep you on the edge of your seat and talks about everything from culture to lessons, ego, travel, women, parties, fast cars, corruption. It really does have something for everybody. But it was such a good read and I really enjoyed it. And best of all of the proceeds go to a very good foundation. So don't forget to head over to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca. Click on blogs at the top of the page. You're going to see this episode and it will have all of the links where you can buy the book, connect more with Marek as well as his foundation, and be able to follow him on social media and see all of the interesting things that he does. He is definitely somebody you are going to want on your radar. So no matter what you're doing today, whether it's in the country you were born in or you're starting something somewhere else, make sure that you're having fun. Because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?